It gives me great pleasure, as Gary had said, to introduce actually a couple who have spoken to us before. We have Rick and Ellan Lawrence. Rick is the District 7890 Chair of the Water Projects. He has been in Rotary for 41 years, and as I was talking to Ellan, so hasn't she, kind of, because she's been the one behind him all these years. He is with the Manchester Rotary Club. They spend their winters in Florida, their summers in Rhode Island. They are both now retired, and I'm not going to tell you any more about them because Rick's going to tell us all. If we could please give a warm Rotary welcome to Rick and Ellan Lawrence.
Let me just interject one thing. Rick and Ellan did talk to the club about a year ago.
Yes.
And they first informed us about the Guatemala Water and Sanitation Project and the great work that they did. And as you know, we're a service organization that does not only domestic service programs, but also international service programs. And so at the urging of Bill, when I came in, we had, I contacted Rich and said that our club would like to participate in the project, and we did give $8,000 a pledge to his club, to his project this year. So we have a history with Rick and his wife.
Well, thank you again for having us back, and certainly for a prospective member who's interested in Rotary. This is one of thousands of projects all over the world, international. You don't hear that much about them, when you're in a local club. So let me start off by explaining this particular first slide. These villages, all in blue, have been completely finished. They're operating, and they're all self-sustaining. So there's no more money going back into them from Rotary. In March of this year, Ellan and I visited Pamazul, Vista Hermosa, and San Vicente. And I'm going to show you those villages and how Rotary money makes such a big difference in their lives. This current Rotary year, which ends at the end of this month, and Gary's counting the days, I hear, we're raising funds for Chahalalai, Simaholu, and Shinotosh. And I might point out, after we were here last year, I guess Gary and the board decided to hold off making a contribution until January of this year, and I think yours was the first check. Your check has gone to the foundation, and it is funding the village of Simaholahu. Okay, so next year, let's hope we can come back and show you exactly how your money went, but I'm going to show you how other Rotary clubs have been participating. I always start off, and I think it's important to say why participate in a water and sanitation project. Look at this third bullet point. 30,000 people every day all over the world die because of water-related illnesses. 90% of them are children under the age of 5 years old. There's another fact that some Rotarians are not aware of, and that was about 15 years ago when Jonathan Majiagbe, the Rotary International President from Nigeria, established a goal that every Rotary Club every year participate in one of these projects. Why hasn't that been at the forefront? Well, us as Rotarians know that since 1986, we've been trying to eradicate polio all over the world, and we've gained all kinds of acclaim for that. And you've seen in our magazines and posters that we're this close to eradicating polio. When it comes to water and sanitation, it's a bigger problem. And I don't mean to stand here today to say that Guatemala is the only place. It just happens to be with how things worked out, and they continue to work out. We've had an excellent working relationship. So we're hoping that we will eradicate polio, and you're going to start to see an emphasis on water and sanitation. I've left on the tables what I call our track record of assistance. In Rotary year 06-07, there were 12 clubs. My home club of Manchester, Connecticut is in Area 6 of our district. I got the 6 presidents together. I went to 6 other clubs, and we raised $24,000, and we completed the systems that I'm going to show you in the village of Cohomacha. There'll be a pronunciation quiz at the end, okay? A lot of these are indigenous languages, Mayans, okay? They're not necessarily Spanish. Last year, we had a total of 40 Rotary clubs from 7 districts, and we raised $167,000 plus, all right? So for the first, excuse me, I should mention, I want to go back to this. If you notice, there are no global grants shown here for these first 7 years. All of this started because Ellen and I went to Guatemala on vacation. Before any of this, I went and got a makeup card from the Rotary Club of La Antigua, found out they had worked on water projects. I got back and I found out our district governor was proposing 2 initiatives. This is Susan Atkins, that 1, clubs work together on projects, and 2, that water and sanitation be a key element. So I found out, wrote back to the people in La Antigua, the Rotary Club I had just visited. They had too many matching grants at that time. They put me in touch with this organization called Bear Horse Partners for Development, and they've changed their name in the United States to Aldea, which means village in Spanish. We got permission from Rotary International that we were going to then give money directly to an NGO, not to help another Rotary Club take care of the funds. And RI said that other clubs had worked with this NGO, and we could do that. So they have a stellar record in terms of finances and accountability. So that's how this all started, and each year it seems to be growing and growing. So for those first 7 years, we worked with Aldea, but every time we went to Guatemala, and this has been 12 years in a row just for these projects, we made it a point to visit the Rotarians. We went to some of their meetings, some of their fundraisers, and we became very good friends with them. And then when global grants came about 5-6 years ago, one of the criteria is that you must have a Rotary Club in the country in which the project is being done. So when I asked them, would they be the host, and they said absolutely. So it's been working great. So they're the host. We, by that I mean the 40-plus Rotary Clubs, are called the international partners, and then you work with an NGO. Why work with an NGO? Well, Rotary has this Water and Sanitation Rotarian Action Group, and they encourage building alliances with a local NGO. Why? Because they're familiar with the local conditions, the culture, the politics, and I'm going to add to that, as I hinted before, the languages. When you go an hour and a half to 2 hours up into the mountainous regions of Guatemala, the indigenous Mayans speak Cachical, Quiche, and Mam. These are indigenous languages that are not written. And most of the Rotarians are business people, professionals, and they're not of indigenous descent, and they can't converse with them. So that's why 11 of the 12 employees of Aldea are indigenous, and when they go to these villages, they can survey and ask them questions. An interesting thing is that some of these villages, when you'll see me presenting things, it has to go from English to Spanish, and then somebody translates from Spanish to Quechical. And when they talk, it goes Quechical to Spanish to English. And we hope we don't lose anything in the translation, as they say. So I want to focus now on the 3 villages that we visited, that were completed, and are now operating. This is what happens is usually in August, the beginning of a Rotary year, I converse via email with Francisco Enriquez, or Paco. He's the executive director of Aldea. And based on what Rotary clubs have given in the past, and hoping that they'll continue to give the same, as well as I've been increasing every year, as you saw on that chart, more clubs getting involved, we put together a budget based on what we think we can fund for villages. So last year, as I mentioned, 7 clubs from 7 different districts. We raised $75,000 plus. Here's why the foundation and giving to the foundation is so important. They match those $75,000 50 cents per dollar. So we got $37,500 back from the foundation, free, if you want to call it that. Also, another reason why they started these is to leverage the funding through the foundation. If a district commits DDF, district designated funds, and our district 7890 gets anywhere from $60,000 to maybe $75,000 a year back from the foundation in what's called DDF, and our district has given a minimum of $10,000 every year. If that money goes to a global grant, the foundation matches it dollar for dollar, so it doubles. So we had $22,000 from DDF, and we got $22,000 from the district, so we got $44,000 in the bank, if you want to call it free, starting at the beginning. So that last year, for the 3 villages, the global grants totaled $160, but if you noticed, we raised $167 plus, and I'll get into where the extra money goes later. One of the other things that I really have to point out is that the model that Aldea has developed I guess, can best be summarized by the saying that if you give a man a fish, he has a meal, but if you teach him to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime. That sort of philosophy is what they want to have happen. When a village contacts Aldea, and they know that there are hundreds of other villages that are waiting online and would like to do this, Aldea says to them, the money that Rotary gives is going to go one time and for materials only. All of the labor has to be done by the men and the women in the village. So now they have ownership, they know how to put it together, they put in that sweat and equity, and if it has to be repaired, extended, maintained, etc., they can do it on their own. So that's why I emphasize that all 22 villages we've done are self-sustaining. Every year that we go back, we ask Paco, what's happened to the previous ones? They're all operating. Part of the global grant process that I write, and if anyone wants to give me a hand, this is what it's like. In addition to all the engineering drawings and training templates and so forth, I have to put in here that they're going to appoint a treasurer in every village. And the treasurer goes around and collects maybe $1, $1.25, $1.50 from every household. Why? Now they have a reserve. So if something breaks, something has to be fixed or extended, they've got the money. They're told up front, you're not going to get any more from the Rotary. So these are the 3 villages that we visited. Notice the number of families, and I point that out. And this is the population next to it. They average 6.3 children per family, all right? Average. And when I mention families, it's because every family, every household gets the 4 components I'm going to explain. The sinks, the toilets, etc., or latrines. It's not as if there's just one in each village. Now, before we do these projects, the women and the children have to walk 20 minutes each way to obtain water from basically contaminated streams. And it's certainly not this color and we just turn a faucet on anywhere in the house, let's say. They have to walk and carry it. So they spend about half of their day carrying jugs of water, and you can't drink it. It has to be boiled first. So after we make visits to Rotary clubs, I think we have something like 25 from when we got back May 1st until the end of June or July up in our district in Rhode Island. When I'm in Florida in the winters, I've been also going to Rotary clubs there, and we had 5, and this year 5 more we visited, and in fact, yesterday I got a check from Coconut Creek Rotary Club. So more and more we got 10 or so in Florida that are contributing. And I'm going to extend the invitation to you, Gary, that June 18th, which is the second to last June, in Manchester, Connecticut, we have what's called the annual check presentation. I have a copy of your check that's already gone. So it's a ceremonial thing where every club can then say a few words, and one of the former vice presidents of Aldea, Zoe Kopp, is coming down from Vermont, and she's going to accept the checks. And because our district has had almost 50% of the clubs involved in this particular project, we got a lot of past president and future district governors showing up. And of course, we make this big oversized check as part of the presentation. And we're about 13 to 18% of BPD's annual, or Aldea's budget. So let's go to Guatemala in Central America. We stay down here in La Antigua, the old historic capital, and these villages are, as I said, 1.5 to 2 hours up into the mountains. Now, when I show you the houses that these people live in, and I mean it is the most primitive and meager living conditions, the whole country, of course, is not like that. The cities have beautiful architecture like the National Palace that the Spanish brought in, churches, government buildings, post offices, etc. What's the terrain like? Guatemala is known for its many dormant volcanoes, such as over here. However, last spring, in 2018, this Volcán de Fuego blew its top, and I think it was well over 100 people were killed because the lava just flowed into their village. I took these on the roof of the house we stay at in La Antigua, and at night, if I go up there, you can see red lava shooting up. Luckily, it's about 30 to 40 miles away from the villages that we fund and we help out, so they weren't affected. How do you get there? You have to go up in a 4-wheel drive truck or an SUV, because this is what the roads are like. And this year, on the Friday we went up, there was a protest on the highway, and we had to take a lot of back roads, and it was all dirt, switchbacks up and down, potholes. It was like 2.5 hours. Man, it was tough to get there, but we did. So when we arrive, this is what it's like our 4th of July. And these are rolls of firecrackers shooting off, and they shoot off, you know, not a cannon, but a rocket too. And you can tell by the people in the bottom pictures what they're doing. They're holding their ears. So we're greeted by these kids. They are just so happy. They are so delighted. They don't have to spend 3-4 hours a day carrying water with their mothers. The first thing that happens is that there's a little presentation when I'm first given a chance to talk. And this is in Pamazul, Vista Hermosa, and San Vicente. These are the 3 villages. Notice on the ground up here, there's some green stuff. The morning after the first village of Cohomacha, when that was finished and we visited, this goes back 12, 13 years ago, we met with the Rotarians and the people from Aldea who helped us put it all together. Their first question, were there fresh green pine needles on the ground? So I took out my digital camera and I said, yeah, why? They said, that's the indigenous Mayans' red carpet. The theory is they don't want visitors' feet to get dirty and dusty. Now, you don't see it in these 2 pictures because we're at the school and they have a paved playground. But watch when I show you where our money went, and you'll see they decorate it with this. So the first thing that I do, and we've done this every year, is I bring down one of these plaques for every village. And every Rotary club that gave has their name on here. So I know yours came in because it's going to go to the ones we're fundraising now, so you're not on here. But let's hope next year you'll be on one of these also. So every one of the 40 clubs, I give equal billing, because some clubs give more, some give less. Doesn't matter if it's hundreds or thousands of dollars. Everybody gives what they can, and that's what this is for. So while this other stuff is going on, they have a couple of masons, and you'll see that they securely mount it onto part of the water system. The first year, Ellan got a hold of the people in Aldea and said, besides this plaques, is there anything else we can bring? And they said the schools have nothing in terms of supplies. They don't have pencils, crayons, coloring books, glue, erasers, you name it. So we bring down 4 suitcases filled with stuff for the schools. And we have one of those luggage scales, so we get up to about 49.87 pounds, just under the 50. How do we get the money for this? We bring back 4 suitcases full of these beautiful handicrafts. So if you want to do a little shopping afterwards, Ellan will take care of you. I think everything towards the left is $25 each, and the right are $10. And that goes to pay for the plaques and next year's school supplies. My club in Manchester has, almost as long as we've done this, been involved in the dictionary project, giving out dictionaries to 3rd graders. They make an Inglés Español version. So Jeff Knabb in my club has given me a case, and whatever we can fit in without going over the $50, we bring down 3 or 4 for their school. And football, we call it soccer, of course, is the world's favorite sport. And these boys touch these soccer balls like they're gold. I take out all the air and put rubber bands around them, put them in the suit, and then for the girls we bring down basketballs and playground balls. And that first morning, it's about, I think, 2.5 hours of pumping them back up again. So Tom Brady wasn't the first one involved with Inflategate, all right? I'll take blame for that. Then we sit down and they give us things for all of the clubs who were participating on this plaque last year. They gave me these little tapestries, one for each village that I bring back to give to the clubs. So now I want to show you where the Rotary money goes. Look at the color of the water down here. It's certainly not like this. And you never know whose clothes have been washed upstream or what it's disgusting. How do they get the water to their households? Well, they carry it in what are called tinajas, or jugs. And a few years ago in Sakia, the women put this on my head. That thing weighed 35 pounds filled with water. It's too big for us to get in our suitcase. So we brought one that the girls, the little kids, carry back with us. And since Liz has been picked on too much today, I'll ask her if she would pick that up. I'll warn you, it's filled with water and it weighs 25 pounds. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
It's heavy.
I'm not putting this on my head.
Okay, all right. We don't want to have a workers' comp claim the first day you're at a Rotary meeting. But just to drive home the point, it is amazing. And you know, the mothers have one on their head with a hand, they have a baby strapped to their back, and then they've got their laundry.
Wow.
Yeah, life is tough. Now, I mentioned the women and the men do all of the labor. Notice digging trenches, carrying cement. You cannot get a cement mixer up to these places. It is so steep. So everything has to be done by hand. We're given the honor then of cutting the ribbon at each of the households in each of the villages. There's another, if you want to call it, incentive that Aldea talks to these people about, teaching them that in addition to the monthly collection for reserves, they're saying Rotary is going to give you an awful lot. You have to put a little bit in yourself. So they have to put in about $25 if they want one of these 3-part sinks. And then they put in about $75 for the stove, so roughly $100 per household. The average farmer earns $13.50 a week. So they got to put in roughly $100. So some of the families like this one can't afford it, or they haven't saved enough, they don't have a sink. This is one of the completed distribution tanks. You can see there's a blue plaque here. This is in Vista Hermosa. There's another plaque there. Besides me, that plaque is mounted on the distribution tank. And where these boys are standing here, that raised section, that's this area. Part of the global grant, when I write this, we have to say they're going to put a chlorination system in there. Excuse me. And one person in the village puts in the tablets, and they have a little test kit to make sure that the water stays potable all the time. Now, for the first time, and the village that you've helped funding for this year, Simahululu, they're putting in solar panels. First time ever, and this was in San Vicente. These are an array of 21 panels, and I mentioned that we raised more than what was needed for the global grant. Some of that, $7,000, paid for this, and the village members saved up money and put it in. Notice the steepness. Look at this guy standing down there. You can't get trucks and vehicles in there. Just to back up, what's typically done is the first thing is a village wants to work with Aldea and Rotary. Aldea tells them, buy the land on which a spring is located. You can't get a drilling rig up there. They don't drill wells. So they find where there's 1 or 2 or 3 springs, and they have to buy that land. I've got to get the deed and send it to the Rotary Foundation to prove they own the land and nobody's going to hold them hostage or shut off the water. And sometimes that takes a year or 2 years for them to go through all that paperwork. So they have to buy the land, and oftentimes the spring is, let's say, down here, but the village is here. So they have to pump the water from the spring up to the distribution tank, and from the tank, everything then goes by gravity. So in those villages where they didn't have solar panels, they have to put in an electric pump, a diesel generator, and diesel fuel tank. They also then put in a water meter at each household. And the treasurer goes around and checks the water meter every month, and if they've used a lot of water, that meter is spinning around, and they have to pay a higher proportional amount for their share of water used in the month before by diesel fuel. So that's why they're so thrilled that they've got a solar pump and power system. So here's one of the completed plaques. You'll notice that most of the clubs are Connecticut, Massachusetts, but they're also from Rhode Island, state of Washington, and several from Canada. This has just been expanding. So the second component are gray water filters. Once they've used the water, and you've got grease and soap and oil in the sink, if you put it on the ground and let it go spilling around, it turns black, and it smells, and you get insects and animals. So part of the grant says they have to have, they call it a sumideros, or gray water filter. One of the employees of Aldea is picking up the top here. Notice the white stuff. They scoop that out maybe once a week, and then they bury it. Then the gray water they put back into the ground. Notice the pine needles all around. The third component are latrines. This is a completed one. This is what their toilets or their bathrooms, if you will, are like beforehand. Just disgusting. The men have to dig a pit a hole in the ground, 5 meters deep, which is about 17, 18 feet. They put a cast concrete top on it with a hole. The hole is then covered by a concrete toilet. And then there's also a pipe, if you see here, that ventilates the odors up above, so there's no flies and insects and so forth. And you know, they put a concrete block surround, they put a roof on it. It's a lot better than previously, and there's a little more privacy. This one over here on the right, just to the left of that land dropped off like 300 or 400 feet. So I'd hate to have to go there at 3 in the morning and take a wrong turn. So I guess the British would call that a loo with a view. Now the fourth component are these safe stoves. This is a completed stove, and this is what it's like when I said meager construction standards. Notice, sorry, the mud brick, bamboo walls, tin roof. Look at the smoke just pouring out of it. For hundreds of, or maybe thousands of years, the Mayans would build a raised pedestal and have an open fire. Smoke would just fill the place, soot. They sent us a study a few years ago that if the children are exposed to this smoke on a daily basis, and they're strapped to the mother's back, starting in the womb for the first 1,000 days of their lives, that's 3 years, it does such irreparable harm to their lungs that they can't absorb the nutrients in food. Probably one of the reasons why the Mayans are so short, very short stature. This is one of the newer stoves. Notice there's a little firebox here that uses 70% less wood. That's how efficient it is. So in addition to not have to carry that for half a day, they're not chopping the forest and spending a lot of time carrying wood. And all of the smoke gets vented, because of its efficiency, gets vented out, and it's insulated so the kids can't get burned. Now the hot plates, if you will, are here in the middle, so there's no chance that if a woman is putting boiling water down in the ground and kids getting burned, they just move it to the side, as you see in this picture. Also, because they have so little, they don't have kitchen tables or chairs, they don't have refrigerators, none of that stuff. Once they have a meal, they all sit on the mud or dirt floor. Paco told us that this wider, non-heated area now serves as their dining room table, so the whole family gathers around that. We had lunch at 2 of the 3 villages. We went into the kitchen to thank the women for cooking, because the whole village helps participate. When I started by going into the village, I showed pictures of the little kids. Well, look at these women and the lines of aging on them, because for decades they've been carrying those tinajas, or jugs. And they come up to us with tears in their eyes, and they hug us, and they say, gracias, mucho gracias. It just is so important. And these small, achievable, sustainable projects just have an enormous impact on their health and well-being. To the point that I've gotten some facts here, that within 1 year after the projects are completed, the number of intestinal diseases and diarrhea cases decreased by 60%. The eye infections, respiratory ailments, and burns are also reduced by almost 60%. The reduction of childhood malnutrition in these Mayan communities decreases 10% every single year. It just keeps dropping. Guatemala is the 5th highest rate of malnutrition in the world, and the highest in Latin America. Now, hopefully the children can attend school and play rather than spending half their day carrying water. The women now have some extra time to weave and sew and make these handicrafts. Paco tells us they now have a little time. Once in a while they go to the market and they have some money. And now for the first time they have some say in the family or household finances, which they haven't had before. Now, RI has recognized these the first year. All 12 presidents got this citation for the best cooperative project. Rotary in Pictures, if you recall, is the magazine that comes out every June. The new one just came out a few weeks ago. And I had submitted this picture of Douglas Guerra drinking water, and the caption was pondering as if it was drinkable, because before they just couldn't drink water that came like that. And it was that year that they decided to ask people to vote on the internet for the picture that best represented service above self. And with 12 clubs involved and all the Rotarians, I guess we stuffed the ballot box and it won. So, and I can say there was no Russian collusion in that. None. So I don't say this to pat myself on the back, but a number of clubs have used this picture. It's theirs. It's Rotarians on the, for the cover of a golf magazine, golf tournament. wine tasting, etc. I think another way RI has recognized us is we've had 6 completed global grants, and this year we've got 2 that are approved. Funding for 1 is complete. I'm trying to get clubs to now give for the second one. I hope all of you as Rotarians did join, as I did 41 years ago, not to get rewarded or recognized, but to help others. And I was just shocked out of my mind. It's so humbling when you do get recognition. And back in our district conference a few years ago, I was given the Service Above Self Award, highest individual award that Rotary gives. And I guess what really shocked me was it's only given to a maximum of 150 people around the world per year. So it's quite a tribute, and much of it because of what we've been doing here. Rotary's also established this WASH challenge in schools, water and sanitation, hygiene. 5 countries, they're giving money to Rotary clubs to teach the children, especially the girls, the importance of washing your hands, sanitation, hygiene. And Guatemala is one of those 5 countries. And the Rotary Club we deal with is getting the funding, no application, and they're helping out that way. So this is the flip side of what I've left on the tables. This is the global grant we're working on this year that your club has already contributed to. And we've got 8 districts trying to raise $91,000. We'll get over 45.5 from the 50-cent match from the district. And the real important thing here is I've got 6 districts giving DDF, which doubles. So this $29,000 doubles to another 29, so we're starting with $58,000. So I'll conclude with this picture of Douglas Guerrera drinking the water, and they say in Spanish, sin agua no hay vida, and we would say without water there is no life. Thank you for your support, and I'll be glad to answer a few questions before your 1:30 adjournment. Gary?
Very nice. Worthwhile program, reaching out, helping many, many unfortunate people.
Yes. Any questions?
Yes, Peter?
Not exactly a question, but since the last time you were here, every time I take a glass of water, I went frostbite.
Thank you. Well, every time we come back, I leave the water running and say, as I'm brushing my teeth, and I quickly turn it off. I mean, it really drives it home.
Don't throw any out.
Don't throw it out. Well, I don't know where we're going to put the water that we put in here, but
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay, what I'd like to do now is a tradition we have here at the club. We asked you at the beginning of the club, you and your wife, to select a book. The book that you selected was Sisters by Raina Tella Ramir, and it will be donated to the East Longmeadow Library in your name. There'll be a label put on the book saying that this book has been dedicated on your behalf. And we give you this as sort of a reminder of the donation you've made, hoping that you'll keep it, as a sort of a page marker, and every time you look at it, you'll remember your presentation here and the great work that you're doing in Guatemala.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is to you and to your lovely wife. Now, let me just digress just for a minute. Would you like to say anything? Because I know you are a team effort. You'd like to say anything in addition to what?
I think Rick said it all. It's really, so much of the work that we do there really impacts the women in the village. And there was one of the women in the top right, we went to her home, and she was speaking. And Mayans are very quiet people, very reserved people, and especially the women. And she started to talk, and talked for quite a while. She looked right at me. And I kind of said to her, notice her eyes. Her eyes never left me the entire time. And I have no idea what she was saying because she was speaking in Cachacao, and I do not speak Cachacao, which is a Mayan dialect. But I just knew from her heart to my heart, just being a woman and what a woman goes through in her home, how difficult it is for these people. So they appreciate everything. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, on behalf of our club, we would like to thank both you and your lovely wife for the work that you've been doing, and I'm sure that's probably going to continue, for a few more years to certainly a worthwhile cause.
I should have mentioned that every dollar that you've donated through the foundation, you get credit for Paul Harris.
Yes.
So you've given $1,000, and therefore, you're going to be able to give a Paul Harris Award. Doesn't have to do with anything in the water and sanitation, it's just, that's another incentive they have to work on these global grants, or
Right.
participate in them.
Correct.
And their
Okay.
1,000 is 1,500.
Right, that's right. Your 1,000 now really becomes $1,500 because of the matching.
Okay.
You only get credit for the 1,000.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
But still.
But still, it's one Paul Harris.
Okay, again,
Thank
thank you
you.
very, very, very much. All right, that pretty much concludes our meeting. Be sure where it is. Michael, will you lead us through the four-way test?
I will indeed. Four-way test are the things that we think, say, and do. Number one.
Is it the truth?
Number two.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Number three.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Number four.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And that officially concludes the meeting. If anybody is interested, there is some handicraft from